Now, to be sure, Guild Wars 2 is not a perfect MMO. In fact, it does have its flaws, and I think that can be very apparent. You just ask literally anyone on Reddit. But the game does a lot of things very, very well. And I'm going to share with you some of the best features of Guild Wars 2 and why it might be worthwhile for you to play. But don't just take my word for it. I've actually asked the community, the players who spend every day logging in, doing their things, why they enjoy this game so much. What is its best features? I'm going to cover everything that keeps them coming back to this great game. Let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing right out of the gate, and honestly one of the biggest hooks for any MMO if you're going to play the game, is its combat. The combat has to be engaging. There has to be a reason, one, to feel cool, to feel powerful, to make sense, if that does make sense. You want the combat to almost feel as an extension of yourself, as you were thinking the gameplay goes. Now, Guild Wars 2 does a lot of things right, and one of the best things, in my opinion, is their combat. And honestly, that was the most popular answer as far as the best feature in Guild Wars 2. A lot of the community members have said that they keep coming back because they enjoy the way that the gameplay is set up, is that as you are going through that gameplay loop, the one that you take with leveling, that you take into raids and strikes, even into PvP and World v World, it feels good, it feels smooth, and it makes sense, I guess, if that makes sense. And some of the smaller things, the things that you can choose to pay attention to or choose not, are such as combo fields and combo finishers. Those are an added affect. And then, of course, you could even look at the differences between using a sword for one profession to a sword to another. For example, a Guardian using a sword is going to look very different to a Mesmer using a sword. And it's that type of unique replayability that I feel makes a lot of players really just want to keep coming back to the game because it feels different. I'm not using the same slashing attack. My attack now causes me to be able to evade all attacks incoming for a short period of time. Or my sword attack for my Guardian teleports me to the enemy to damage them. That's a really cool feeling, especially having all these different diverse weapon sets, that it's not the same copy and paste. Oh, this one applies some conditions. It's different and it adds a unique layer to it. Not to mention the other side of this, which is of course the weapon swapping. So within Guild Wars 2, if you are unfamiliar, is that there is weapon swapping. Most professions, save for the engineer and the elementalist, can actually swap weapons in combat. Meaning that if you were using a greatsword on your Guardian, you can swap to a sword and shield mid-combat and have 5 new abilities to use. This offers so much when it comes to not only, we'll say, build creativity, but just player choice, which I think is ultimately one of the big, we'll say, retaining features of, well, we'll say, any good MMO, and Guild Wars 2 especially. This is one of the reasons why the combat feels so great, is because it's seamless. There's no delay while you are swapping your weapons. You could go into the animation for one weapon and then swap mid-animation, completing that first one, and then start swinging with your second. It feels good just to be able to rotate back and forth in that way. And it's also encouraged, which is one of the best reasons why this game has some of the best combat in any MMO. But even going kind of off of that thought of the idea of weapon swapping and choosing which weapons to have, another feature, and this is probably one of the most popular ones, is the idea of build creativity. Now, I mentioned earlier that a lot of players, especially when getting into MMOs, really enjoy the idea of building my character the way that I want to. Actually, in the past couple of months, I've created a whole bunch of RP builds that aren't obviously necessarily the best. They are not statistically the best damage dealers, the best healers, you know, what have you, but they provide a unique way to play. I had a functioning Beastmaster build for the Ranger. I have a Paladin Guardian build that I actually kind of want to make a video on. Hold up. But the idea is that the build diversity is insane, and there are so many layers tied to it. Not only are we talking about your trait lines, which are the added affects to your baseline abilities, but then on top of that, you have your 3 utility skills, you have your healing skill, you have your elite skill, you have your weapon choice, main set and offset, you have the gear that you choose and the stats that you are improving, on top of the runes that you can slot into the gear, Not to mention the sigils that go into your weapons that have individual uses, as well as the relic that adds an extra layer of, we'll say, creativity. And I know that's a lot. That's a lot to actually take in as a new player. But the idea of it is that there is so many different, we'll say, layers of customization in this game that the build creativity and building out to be exactly what you want it to be is astronomical. Like, you could have so many different builds and them all be unique and have their unique strengths across the board. That's a fantastic way to have an MMO. And it's one of the reasons why people really enjoy this game and why veterans will stay and keep playing, is because, oh, well, let me try this build for a little bit, see if it works a little bit better. For example, I recently came out with a Battle Mage Tempest build that was using a hammer as well as the elite specialization from Heart of the Thorns. I've actually found out that in PvP, if I go with a double dagger setup in comparison to the hammer, I actually end up doing a lot better. I hit harder, I move faster, I have a lot more survivability, and that's just something that I learn and I pick up as I go. So the idea of it is that it's an ever-evolving thing, and of course every single time that they change any of the stats or the balance inside of Guild Wars 2, you're going to have a unique flavor, you're going to have a new tool set to play with. That's probably one of the best features in this game, is that you're able to be what you want and create what you want, and really not be harped on for it. But what happens when real life gets in the way? And I wouldn't say gets in the way as much as I say you have priorities outside of the game, which happens with any game. And especially as you get older, typically we have full-time careers, we have families, we have other obligations that we are looking after. So gaming tends to fall behind, and that is an eventuality with most people. I will say that this game probably approaches this method the very best way. Actually, one of the comments made a very good point, is that Guild Wars 2 can be both fast food as well as a gourmet feast. If you only have a little bit of time, here's a couple things that you can go ahead and do and still move the needle, still progress your character in a way that you want to. If you have a lot of time, there's a whole gourmet buffet for you to just sink your teeth into, figure out what you want to do and move on from there. Duality of these two different ideas is that you are still progressing. However, if you need to step back because of real life, because of unforeseen events or what have you, something has happened and you can't play and you can't log in, you're not missing anything. The idea of the horizontal progression and the way that it is in this particular game is that I don't ever have to feel like I'm missing time because, well, you know, I had real life obligations that needed my attention. And that's probably one of the most beautiful parts about this game, is that I don't necessarily have to feel tied, we'll say, to constantly having to log in to either A, get my money's worth, but B, make sure that I don't fall behind so I can keep up with the real objectives that I want to do. Raiding, for example, in Guild Wars 2, it does require a certain level of gear, it does require a certain level of skill. However, if you earn said gear in 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, you're not going to miss out on being able to join into that raid group because of lack of gear. You're still just as qualified as you were the moment that you logged off. And that's the beautiful part of this game, is that the account-wide progress, and especially the character-wide progress, never falls behind. If your unique build was super valuable, you know, 6 months ago, it may have changed, obviously, with stat balances and changes along those lines and nerfs, lots of nerfs. But the idea is that if you get to this point here, 6 months later, your character's still going to be just hitting almost as hard or perhaps even harder. The idea is that you never fall behind because of real life obligations. And honestly, this is one of the things that popped up. I actually have quite a few, we'll say, parents in my group and within my community who talk to me about this type of thing, who say, I love this game because I can just log in and do what I want and do what I need to, but if I don't log in that night, I'm not so far behind that I'm missing out. And that's key. That is absolutely key. And kind of building off of that is the way that this game's payment structure is set up. So Guild Wars 2 does broadcast as a free-to-play game. Yes, technically, I consider it more of a free-to-trial game. And the way that the community has kind of responded to this is that it is a free-to-play game, or in that sense, a no subscription game. So once you purchase the game, you are able to play everything, and there's tons of replayability all across the board. The idea of not having to pay a subscription is a big selling feature of why Guild Wars 2 is great. Kind of going back to what I was just talking about as far as the horizontal progression and the reason why, you know, you might not be able to log in. You don't feel as if you are essentially losing money. There's that funny cost sunk fallacy, or sunk cost fallacy, one of the two. But the idea of where players are now, and especially as the MMO population, I say the MMO population is because for the most part, they tend to fall somewhere in the neighborhood of, like, at least for my audience, is 25 to 40. We have gone through and played the whole subscription-based model, usually with WoW, is really where I see a lot of my players and my community come from. Or even in that sense, Final Fantasy. And the idea is that paying for a game that you've already purchased, but to continue to play it, it becomes a lot less valuable, especially to those who have, we'll say, kids or, you know, other obligations. This kind of rolls back into that idea of saving your spot due to horizontal progression. My point being that when I am playing Guild Wars 2, I never have to worry about spending any money on this game because I've already purchased the expansions. I've already done everything that I needed to and purchased everything that I wanted as far as the content is concerned, and then I'm good to go. Now, yes, I would be remiss to say that there isn't any other ways that you can pay. Of course, you can also purchase the Living World seasons, which occasionally they come out for free, or really any of the items off of the Gem Store, which is their in-game shop, which there really is no power creep here. So it's not a pay-to-win game, of course. It's more so pay to look fashionable or pay for convenience, which is, in my opinion, really not that bad of a thing, to all things considered. Like, if I wanted to purchase this convenience, for example, having some home nodes, or having more bag slots, or bank slots, or character slots, I don't mind paying the extra money for that because I've already have a great game and I can already build out the way that I want to and continue playing the game that I've already paid, but the choice is mine. The money that I'm spending isn't just siphoning out of my pocket just because. I can choose when I want to spend the money and on what. And honestly, most of the items on the Gem Store are fairly cheap. And again, I look at it even in the cosmetic sense. Like, a lot of the stuff just makes you look cool. And some of the stuff just helps you out as far as like having more storage. Essentially, those are the two big features, but I'm not losing money monthly just because I don't have to pay for a game that I've already purchased. And then even further, if I have to take time off, I don't have to worry, oh, did I cancel my subscription? Did I have to do anything like that? Nope, horizontal progression, I'm right where I left off. I can pick up and start playing and do it all over again if I need to in a year from now, which is without a doubt one of the best features, and it's actually one of the highest rated features that the community has responded, at least to my post. And of course, kind of building off of the whole idea of horizontal progression and we'll say account-wide progress, one of the highest rated features and will completely immerse everything in the game is the mounts. So I do have to talk about the mounts here in Guild Wars 2 just because it is one of the most, we'll say, loved features across the board. And if you've played other MMOs and have watched, they've tried, but they can't match what Guild Wars 2 has done. Now, of course, with Secrets of the Obscure, they do have an emphasis on getting you the Sky Scale, which is one of the 2 flying mounts. That is something that they want you to do early on, as it is a very important part of the story of the latest expansion. And once you have the Sky Scale, it kind of trivializes most of the other mounts, save for perhaps maybe the Roller Beetle, or even say, for example, the Jackal. And once you have the Sky Scale, essentially you can conquer everything else. Having said that, each one of the mounts has their own unique uses in their own special way. So for example, the Roller Beetle is 10 times faster that's a rough estimation, but is significantly faster than the Sky Scale and can cover a lot more ground. Same thing with the Griffin, which is the other flying. You can cover a lot more ground using the Griffin versus you using the Sky Scale. The idea behind this is that each of the mounts have their own unique, we'll say, feature for traversal, and really has its own pliability and its own playability in certain circumstances. But of course, I will say that one of the best things about the mounts in Guild Wars 2 is just when you earn them and then you earn the masteries behind them, you have a sense of achievement. It really does make it seem as if you are earning something that is incredibly valuable. Even if you already have the sky scale and then you go ahead and earn the roller beetle, it's a good feeling. And I'll be honest with you, despite the sky scale usually being the most easily traversable across all the maps and everything, I still see people out in the open world using, for example, the War Claw, which is the world versus world mount, just because they like the way that it looks and it runs. The idea is that you still get the choice. And the mounts here in this game are without a doubt one of its best features, easily. Okay, so let's talk about why all of this matters and why most of the features here that I've already highlighted, why are they so damn important? Guild Wars 2 is a casual MMO.
Wait a minute!
I don't think that that is all that surprising, but everything has built Guild Wars 2 up to be that game that you can play and go hard on for a couple of months and then not play it for, you know, a couple of months. And then come back and check out after their new update. Play that a little bit and then rescind back to something else. The idea behind it is that you have the flexibility to do what you want to do and never feel as if, for example, that you were pressured into the highest intensity, we'll say, picture perfect gameplay that you need to be on top of your game the entire time. I've had people tell me that they just play the game and essentially they just play the Reaper and melt everything and they don't worry about anything else. They have their one build, they don't have any alts, they just play that one class and then there they go. And this is designed this way. Guild Wars 2 is designed this way, especially to be built for those who just want to have that MMORPG experience, but not necessarily have to stress about it. I mean, heck, if you look at Corteria, most of the game, most of the Corteria, the story missions and all that, can easily be defeated with a haphazard matching of gear and an incomplete build set, and you'll be good to go. You don't have to be on guard the entire time you're playing this game. And that's beautiful, especially because a lot of the players who enjoy this game, the ones who keep coming back, are not necessarily the super hardcore raiders and, you know, the highest intensity PvPers that you would see, for example, in like World of Warcraft, where everything has to be perfect. You have to have the perfect stats, you have to have this, that, and the other. A lot of players aren't like that. A lot of players just log in because they're trying to unwind, which is ultimately the beautiful goal of Guild Wars 2 in my mind, and what the community has responded in to me, is that I just want to be able to play the game and not feel like it's work. This is a game. I can relax. I can just worry and build something on my own and I don't have to stress. And I think that is such an underrated feature as far as Guild Wars 2 is concerned. It is certainly one of the best ones for why this game is so great. And heck, I even had a video about how Secrets of the Obscure is completely reworking this whole idea of the best casual MMORPG in the market. But I do want to say that that's not even my biggest reason. Now, I listed out a lot of what the community has stressed, and I even agree with those ideas and what their thoughts are. My personal reason of why this game is so great and its best features, honestly, are twofold. One is the atmosphere. Honestly, this atmosphere, the art style, the animations, everything that has this built in to the gameplay as well as your experience feels immersive. And I think that's one reason that once I actually sat down and focused on Guild Wars 2 and actually gave it that good, solid try that it deserved, I just got sucked in. I love the way that it feels when you're walking around the Shiver Peak Mountains. I think it's so damn cool crossing the Crystal Desert and seeing all these unique features. I feel like I'm there, and that's what's beautiful about this game. You have this beautiful atmosphere paired with wonderful music, thrilling gameplay. I mean, it really just builds it up, and that's one reason why I've stayed with this game so long. But ultimately, I think the biggest reason why, the best feature of this game, is, in my mind, the community. And it's a little bit, we'll say, uncomfortable to some people, and I will say, is how friendly people are in this game. And I don't mean that to say it in a bad way, but a lot of what the community does is just be decent people, decent human beings, and be friendly. Now, I can't, of course, say that for every experience, because if you go into any structured PvP lobby, you're going to get trash talked. It happens. That's PvP for you. But the idea of it being that when you are playing this game, it's actually surprising how kind everyone is. So when you have that experience happening in front of you, or happening to you after you've come from, I bring up World of Warcraft because that's where a lot of my experience comes from, more of a regimented, hardcore mentality, It's a little shocking, and I've actually even heard people say, oh, it's toxic positivity. And I'm like, y'all gotta stop throwing toxic around, honestly. That's just, toxic was a moveset in Pokemon. That's what that is. Anyway, the idea of it is that it's a bit surprising about how well this community is formed together, why this game stays where it is, and why it's progressing into the future with a strong head of steam. It's just because this community has held this game together, and they have reasons for logging in every single day. And what you see here, what I've listed, but they enjoy the idea of new players coming in and experience this great thing. It isn't like they're trying to hoard it. They're saying, I have this really good game, and I really want you to try it. It's something I really enjoy, and I want you to experience that joy. That's important. That's really important. And that's one of the reasons why I love this game. To me, that's one of its best features. Aside from that, the game is great, and I strongly suggest that you give it a try if you are curious. If you want to learn a little bit more about the latest expansion of why it's redefining this casual MMORPG experience, click this video here. Otherwise, stay caffeinated, folks.